Hi, I'm Benton Stokes.
And I'm Elane O'Rourke.
And this is Cocktail Theology. Well, hi.
Hi.
Here we are outside on a really magnificent spring day. Man, it's like 80 degrees, no clouds. It's beautiful.
Jet trail.
Magnolia
tree.
Yes, magnolia
and
tree.
Actually, whatever these things are actually starting to get leaves. I didn't think they were going to. Do you know what those are?
I don't know what those are.
They're typically, I've seen them all over the South.
Yeah.
But I don't have a clue what they are. But they've got leaves, so there you go.
They didn't have leaves last year?
They didn't have leaves a week ago.
Huh.
When we were sitting out here,
right.
I looked out and I was like, I wonder if they're going to get leaves.
Oh.
So there you go.
And now they have leaves.
And now they have leaves. So yes, we're sitting out on a beautiful spring day.
We are. Tennessee is in the springtime. Everything really does sort of come to life. It's a remarkable change that happens in April, so it's nice.
You know we're not in April anymore, right? We just totally overshot spring.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's May now. Well, it's just barely May, but yeah. You're right.
I'm just hanging out.
But speaking of May, you know what else is in May?
Tell me what's in May.
We have a retreat coming up in May.
That's true. We do have a retreat coming up in May.
Yeah, is hosting God for Recovering Evangelicals May 18th through 20th.
Indeed we are.
Here at the Earhart House outside Nashville. So it's going to be a really exciting weekend.
I am very excited about it. I love when we teach this course anyway because so many light bulbs go off.
Yeah.
It's so interesting and so gratifying to watch people's faces completely change as they realize both what they believe and what they might think about instead. Because people are always shocked. I was writing something about this today about how you might think that you don't think that God is vindictive in any way. You think God is loving, whatever, and then something tragic will happen and your first thought is, what did I do?
Right.
And it isn't that you're thinking, there has been a terrible tragedy. God is vindictive. Therefore, it isn't like that's happening. It's just this kind of gut sort of spew that happens in your brain where you go, I wonder what I did to deserve this. Why me?
We default to that.
Why me?
Why me?
Right? Anyway, so I love this course, and I'm so looking forward to being able to work with people intensely over 40 hours.
Yeah, this will be the first time we've done this in a weekend format, so I'm looking forward to it too.
I really love that. I think that we'll have just enough quiet time and art time for people to process, but they'll be focused because it's 40 hours, right? It's Friday at 7 o'clock until Sunday morning. Get out of here in time to go to church if you're local, if your church doesn't start, at an ungodly hour of the day.
Yep.
All full pun intended.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be wonderful. I know it's going to be wonderful. I have no doubt about that. They get to sing with you, which is always a joy.
Worship will be fun.
Worship is always fun. And we'll feed them. And there will be wine.
Yes, and there will be wine because we're there.
Because we're there. And if we're there, there's going to be wine. So when I mentioned this the other day at the church I was attending, I said, I was explaining what was going on. And I said, and there will be wine if you drink wine. And the pastor, so funny, he says, no. He says, we drink wine. We're amazed by the miracle of it turning back into grape juice. and I was like, oh, I love that. That's awesome. Anyway, so there'll be wine, but if you don't drink wine, that's fine. We do Eucharist. That's really Holy Communion, for those of you who don't talk the Greek version. And that's always wonderful. I love, as you know, I love communion. So it'll be great. So we'll be here at the house, and there are 3 acres for you to walk around on, and it should be green and beautiful. And if it's raining and pouring, it'll be rainy and beautiful, and we'll just be inside the house, which is not a bad place to be.
Not a bad place to be either.
At all. So that's May 18th through 20th. Oh, let's not forget to tell the people that if you register by midnight between May 10th and May 11th, if you get it done now, in other words, if you commit and you get it done now, we'll charge you, $100 less.
Right.
And actually, the price we're charging for this retreat, this $395 price, that's the full price, is really minimal for a retreat of this caliber.
Yeah, it is.
I figured it out. So if you figure you're here for 40 hours from Friday at 7 or so until Sunday at 10 a.m. or so, if you're here for 40 hours, even if you pay the full price of $395, you're paying like $10 an hour.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
And that's
if you sign up now, you can get it for $100 off of that.
$7.37 an hour.
How about that?
Really cheap.
What about
So,
it?
yeah, so it's good. Cannot wait. So yes, May 18th through 20th. Oh, and Benton said that it's outside Nashville. For those of you who don't live in Nashville, Hermitage is like it's literally barely outside Nashville and still is considered part of the Metro Nashville area.
Yes, we are part of the Metro Nashville area. But I think about, because where this is so quiet. Yeah, it is. It is. Little birdies tweeting. They're tweeting right now.
They are tweeting.
So it's not a city locale, but it is part of Nashville. So
right.
and very close to the airport if you're flying in.
Extremely close to the airport.
We're 15 minutes or less.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. Yeah, like Uber costs nothing to get here, and we're also, depending upon what time of day, we're also happy to come get you. We'll help you find a place to stay. We have a couple of friends who are willing to rent out rooms cheaply. So
right.
So yeah, we'd love to have you. And if you have any questions about the retreat, or you just have any questions in general, you can always email us at info@schoolforseekers.com. And actually, the easiest way to register the retreat is to just go to our website.
Go to the website.
schoolforseekers.com, and it's right there in front of you. Perfect.
Awesome. All right, well, today we have a very special episode.
We do.
You had the opportunity to interview our friend Scott Erickson.
I did.
And I want to hear more about that. And of course, we're going to hear the interview today.
I've been wanting to interview Scott Erickson for a while now. And he had been traveling around doing this great art thing he does for congregations and other things where someone will be talking or preaching and he'll be drawing or painting during that time. I love that. But anyway, he had been close, and we had tried to get together then, and we weren't able to fix. Anyway, so I messaged him and I said, I don't know if you're going to be anywhere near home, but if you're going to be near home, I'm going to be there in these days. Love to take you to coffee or to a cocktail and talk. So we went for coffee in Vancouver, Washington, which is just above Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
Scott on Twitter is known as Scott the Painter.
Okay.
And on Instagram is Scott the Painter.
Scott the Painter.
And what's great about Instagram, of course, is you can see his art.
And his art
right?
is so cool.
It's so cool. It has this graphic design feel, and it's very linear, very almost woodcutty, printy feeling,
very
right?
printy. Mm-hmm.
It's very strongly symbolic, but interesting in the symbolism. Right? So this is not something he would do. I can look up something he would do. Maybe we should post a picture about this too.
Yeah.
We can post one of his pieces. But it would not be weird for him to have a hand of Jesus with the hole in it and light coming through it or something.
Yeah.
That would be a very Scott kind of thing. Anyway, love his art. On Instagram, he does a long narrative about what the art is or what he was thinking about or something for us to think about. Very much sees it as spiritual practice, and we're all about spiritual practice.
Yes.
So I've been admiring him from afar, and then he was available. So I took Uber from Portland up to Vancouver, left the house at 6:30 in the morning to get there, and then we had coffee, and it was great. So I got to talk to him about all kinds of stuff. So that's what you get to hear today. You've been traveling a lot.
Yeah.
And have you been doing your plays? Have you been doing the live art? What's been going on? What have you been doing, and what have you been enjoying?
Yeah, when you make a living as a visual artist, it's like inconceivable how you make a living. When I say people, they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a professional artist. They're like, okay. How do you make money doing that? That's the first question always.
You do everything.
I do everything. Yeah, and my answer is I do a lot of little things that makes a little something.
Right.
My avenues of revenue. Yeah, I make and sell work. Prints or original work.
Right.
I'm a creative for hire, so sometimes I do some video or design, and then I'm a speaker and a performer and a live painter. So I'll get hired for versus a dead painter.
Right.
So I'll get hired to paint at events. There's a lot of other live painters out there. Not a lot, but there's some. But most of them are like black canvas. They make something really fast, flip it upside down, and it's Jimi Hendrix or Albert Einstein. They make fast portraits of celebrities. I just a long time ago decided I didn't want to do that. I thought more of a helpful role in a teaching role would be if the artist was like an artist within and kind of amongst what was being said and talked about, and so then I was creating out of the content that was being made.
Sure.
And so then at the end you have this didactic series of images that allow formation and education and remembrance. Then and then a speaker on Christian spiritual living, and I wrote my first one-man show 3 years ago called We Are Not Triple Guests. I'm working on my second one, and that has just opened up a way of communicating that isn't so boring. So I got invited to just be on a panel at this thing called Christians in Visual Arts, SIVA, and there were some amazing talks, but all of them were academic, and I just, at some moment I was like, where are all the weirdos?
Right.
This is an arts conference.
Yes.
Like, there's nobody. I just expected one person to be like Doc Brown from Back to the Future. To get up and be like, oh, I make stuff because I'm haunted, and I can't stop thinking about it. Like, the whole thing was like trying to prove that it was a valid conversation instead of just knowing it was and being comfortable in its own skin. And I think that there's something about, at least in my own faith tradition, that I'm like, this is a book of weirdos. Where are all the weirdos?
Right.
It's a bunch of polished, presumptuous kind of presentations of this all makes sense, when I'm like, have you lived in this universe? It's very absurd, with moments of magic, but a lot of suffering, which has been like the most ongoing human conversation. And yet, I can't stop leaning towards the divine. And so I stick with it. And probably if I had a different structure that was given to me, I might feel more comfortable in that, but I was given North American 21st century Christianity. So a lot of my pushback and understanding is woven into that framework.
Makes me think of Merton's sketches. He had a sketchbook, and he was clearly trying to get what was in his head out. Right?
Yeah.
And most of us don't have either the gifts or the persistence to develop the skills to do that. So that's it's a great way to think about it.
Yeah. So there's always I like the eclecticness of my job.
I saw on your website that you're training for spiritual direction.
I am.
Where are you doing that?
My spiritual director here in Portland is part of a organization called Soul Formation.
Okay.
And I started going to him. His name's Morris Dirks. I started going to him because I found myself going, what is the rest of my life like?
Right.
And I was like, I know that I'm called to be an artist, and yet I have this pastoral side of me.
Yeah.
I don't want to run a church, but I care about spiritual formation. I love communities, and so I was like, what do I do with this? But I definitely have a heart for creatives, and I think there's a real need, and I think the opportunity to do spiritual direction with creative leaders and help them with that dynamic of their life.
Absolutely.
We'll see. I don't have any clear vision of where it's going. It just feels right. It'll present itself when it presents itself.
Absolutely. Well, and if you're doing it in tandem with God, you won't know where you're going.
True.
Right? Because the whole thing about God is God lures us towards something and pulls us rather than pushing us. So we're just having to follow what we get as the right thing.
Yeah. The question, why doesn't he show us a long distance trajectory? Because I think he wants to keep us close.
Yeah.
Because if he gave me a map and it's like, here's the rest of your life, I'd be like, thanks, I got it.
You'd run. Yep.
So he's just like, here's the next thing.
Absolutely.
His value is, I want to keep you close.
Right.
Yeah. Ask, like, why do you make things? And my answer is because I'm haunted.
Yeah.
Something comes to me consistently and is like, bring this into the world. There's this conversation, this dance, this relationship I'm being invited into, this mysterious kind of haunting. It's a labor for sure. Like, I like making things, but I don't like being haunted by them. my work ethic is just release the haunting, like try to get it out and be released of the burden of that. So there is this kind of symbiotic back and forth that I've just come to know as that's what the conversation is. You know, to say it's God is to lessen the interaction, but I mean, I think it is.
As soon as you try and say, well, this is exactly what's happening in the mystery, the mystery's gone.
Yeah.
And you guys live in mystery. That's what you do.
Yeah.
You know? And the church, since the Enlightenment, has been terrified of mystery.
Yeah.
You know, it's been how do we turn this into science? Well, it's not science, and so we wind up with white walls and fear of art.
Yeah, I know. Which,
yeah.
I mean, I think that's changing. What the church knows as art, most of it's lame. Just like somebody got up and played the piano horribly and sang horribly consistently, people would be like, I don't know if we should sing in our services. Let's not have that.
Right.
So, you know, whenever somebody's like invited, most artists in the community are amateurs and haven't spent a decade trying to hone their craft. They're just like, I like doing this and it's my offering to God, which is totally true.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that it deserves to be used as formation for everybody.
Right.
It hasn't earned the weight of that responsibility.
The work I've seen of yours has a very iconographic feel, both the linearity, right, of like tattoos and that kind of thing, but also the sense of you're peering through it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
also,
giving a place for your eye to go deeper.
in the Orthodox tradition, the icon is designed not to actually be an art piece, but instead to be a window.
Yeah.
And so that you pay attention to the window in order to see the eternal beyond that.
Yeah.
There's a sense of that, a feeling of that in your work.
Yeah.
Even though your work is diverse, there's a sense that the goal isn't to just appreciate the drawing or the woodcut or the painting or whatever, however you see it, but to see God behind it, to see what the mystery is behind it. That's a powerful way of thinking about work.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on representation versus window.
There's two kinds of artists. There's ones who add and there's one who subtract.
Okay.
And I love like a good wood carving print, but I don't like carving. I'm a painter.
Right.
I like addition. So like often I'll like draw out a whole thing and then I'll paint the whole thing black and then I'll take like a white pen and kind of redo the lines as like a subtraction.
Okay.
And then I photograph that and then I bring it into a computer and then I mess with it in there and then I bring it back onto a canvas and that's like the final piece.
Oh, interesting.
So I move between analog and digital and kind of this whole process of forming it. All artists throughout histories use tools.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who don't make things don't understand like how things are made.
Yeah.
And they just think like, oh, you just walk up to a canvas and you like put it together and it's like, no. Like I always get asked like, so do you have a plan before you start? I'm like, yeah, by the nature of painting, it's layers. Like I have to kind of know
Starting place.
if I'm going to make something in 45 minutes in front of 1,000 people, heck yes, I'm going to know what I'm doing. That doesn't mean it's less inspired.
Right.
Yeah, for me, there's always a conversation of truth. Like, do I feel like this is honest? Do I feel like this is true? A lot of my stuff that resonates with people, I'm like, yeah, it's because I get up early and I do therapy on myself and I make something out of it. And then when I know it's done something, I give it to an audience through this screen and go, maybe this helps you.
Yeah.
You know, so I learned this word last year. It's called astronomy.
Okay.
And it's a Russian-based word, and it's the art of making that which is familiar unfamiliar again.
Nice.
And I realized we give images to children in their education, Christian education, and then after junior high, we don't do that anymore.
Right.
And all language is rooted in imagery. Language is a mode of trying to translate what I'm seeing with my eyes and what I'm seeing interiorly with my feelings and my thoughts. And so to not have any kind of image vocabulary, we then become a culture of word police. Do you think he's the way?
Right.
Yeah, but do you think he's the way? You know,
Right,
and it
absolutely.
becomes like a, are you on my side? It's like the list. This is how I know you belong if you believe this and this and this.
Yep.
And if you go, what is that?
Right.
Is it the way? Is that a path? Is that a a practice? Is it a doorway? Is it a gate? Like, what do you mean the way? Is it like how you do the breaststroke for a long distance swimmer?
Right.
And then they don't know.
Right.
Oh, it's the way though. The conversation goes so far before nobody knows what they're talking about.
Right.
And I've had some experiences in my life where I made this image about forgiveness. And I remember having this art show at this like punk rock cafe in Seattle. This big guy in a leather jacket came up to me. He was like, "Did you make all this stuff?" I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Do you have any favorites?" And he's like, "Oh, it's really good." And I was like, "Do you have any favorites?" He's like, "I like that one." And it was the forgiveness one. I was like, "Oh yeah, why?" And he goes, "Because I get it." And it's a funny epiphany, but I was like, "Oh, Christianity doesn't own the rights to forgiveness."
Right.
That's just a human experience that's really fucking hard.
It's really hard.
And I was like, oh, what I think is my faith tradition in its best form speaks to the deepest truth of human experiences, and it's never trying to separate it from human experience. So I was like, well, what are all these other things that we, that this is all based on or talks about, and what's the images for that? We've also been through a pop revolution and graphic design revolution. So what are these other things, and how would we translate it into now?
Right.
And it's all about context. Yeah, it's just like what does it look like now?
Visual language is very different than it was in the 17th century.
Yeah.
The representations of ideas are radically different.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just don't see things in the same images.
Yeah. Yeah, and I lived in Europe. I lived in Europe twice. But one of the years I lived by a cathedral, the Strasbourg Cathedral, and it's gorgeous. And I went there every day. And it had a profound effect on me, which was like most of the population was illiterate. This whole thing, this is telling theology visually to people who don't know how to read. And I was like, what would that look like now? I don't think we need to build a building like that would be like $1 billion. That's not our goal.
Right.
Well, how would you teach a spiritually illiterate culture? Or what would you use this for? And that's kind of another basis of my formation. And I'll add this too. I'm just giving you all my content. I don't have anything to say. It's just all going to be in this podcast. But I do think I think our gathering spaces are not very impressive because architecturally, we don't make the space to be a teacher, we make the space for a teacher. And then it's really dependent on that teacher versus if you came into a space and you're like, this space is forming me. That's what a cathedral does, or what architecture can do is it's formational. When you walk into a space and it makes you lift, it physically lets you even
when
the
your
lifting
eyes
of your
move
head,
up.
your eyes move up and your body lifts up and you're oversensitive with this awe and it's making the invisible visible. We can do it however we want. There's no rules for it.
Right.
So it's really sad to me that a lot of it just is a lot of bad taste.
Well, no, it's true. I mean, when you start being afraid of the visual, when you start being afraid of the teaching.
Yeah.
And once you put the teaching into words, because you can control words, you absolutely lose that, both the sense of awe and the sense of all art, all visual, which requires interpretation. It requires interpretation. If you don't trust people to interpret things, you don't trust them alone with God. You don't trust them with their own thoughts. And that, I think that the whitening of the walls or the blackening of the walls, depending on what generation you're in, is a sign that we don't trust people to be alone with God.
Yeah.
Because the mystery scares us.
Yeah.
We're living in Houston, yes? The Rothko Chapel is one of those places for me. Rothko, of course, had a very weird relationship with pretty much everything. Yeah. But you walk in, and if you sit there long enough, you start getting that sense of this is a teaching place. This is a place where that lifts my eyes, right? Or drops them.
Oh, I hated the Rothko Chapel.
Yeah.
It was only maybe my 7th time that I got it.
Yeah.
Oh, just because I like ornateness, and I just could imagine all the better ways to fill those canvases instead of just black and purple. But then, it's a window, and when I sat with it, and then I saw something scary come out of it, I was like, oh, Oh, I didn't. Oh, okay.
Right.
This is a vehicle to my own darkness.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
yeah, then I was like, oh, okay, I like it.
Where are you finding joy these days? Where's your joy?
That's a good question. As you can see, my hesitancy to answer, not my hesitancy, my non-quickness, I don't know, just coming out of
Coming out of.
coming out of the dark. Walks. I like walks.
Okay.
My favorite things. Ooh, there's this artist named Myra Coleman.
Okay.
She's great. She's a New Yorker illustrator, and she makes a bunch of books. But she has one called Things I think it's Things I Love, or my favorite. I think it's My Favorite Things.
Okay.
It's just a bunch of illustrations of like cake and boxes, and it's really inspiring. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna do that, because that's actually my second show in one of these movements on not giving up to yourself, is the practice of what do you love. But I like comedy. I'm not doing good at it. I blame children, but I want to try to do some stand-up. But I just think the observation of the world and being able to make a joke out of it is a great spiritual practice. And I think there's a lot of deep spiritual truth and honesty that's happening in comedy that's not happening in religion. So I think the best, I mean, I know some pastors who are really, really funny, and it's great, but I think they're funny as more of entertainment than the deep laugh of all of this. Trying to not let the busyness or the massive responsibility of child rearing take me away from just the joy of little kids and their uniqueness and wonder.
How many kids do you have?
I have a 7-year-old boy, a 5-year-old girl, and a soon-to-be boy.
Right.
An outside boy. He's an inside boy now.
Yeah. He's still cooking.
Yeah, when you have little kids, people come up to you all the time and be like, they're so cute at this age. It goes so fast. You're like, great, thanks. But after 100 times of that, you're like, they're pretty great at this stage, and I think it goes fast. So I'm just trying to take that great cloud of witnesses that comes to me and take their advice and be like, this is the magic time right now.
I think they're all magic times.
Yeah.
I mean, when I sit down with an adult and the adult starts actually reflecting and actually feeling, to me that's magical.
Yeah.
And my daughter's pretty smart and is pretty amusing.
Yeah.
And there are moments of that magic with her, but it's when she's disarmed, when she's just being.
Yeah.
And to me, the magic of that lasts forever.
Yeah.
And the question is, how do you find it in other people? How do you find it in your work? How do you find it in,
Yeah.
Joy matters. I think joy is where God is. Not happiness, but joy.
Yeah.
Not the only place where God is, don't get me wrong. But those moments where we just feel that deep satisfaction, even if it's just for the moment, and everything else falls away just for the moment.
Yeah.
God's in that for us.
Yeah.
And if you're going through depression, then joy can be tough.
Yeah. I mean, it's been rainy and gloomy. It's hard, there's probably should have gone to the beach one day. We moved houses, and it's been in the wintertime, so it's been really hard to it's just in the wintertime up here, you're just inside a lot. But I've been like, I need to find where my nature places are. I know there's a couple trails by my house. Yeah, it's just weird. But yeah, that's a good push.
So what are you listening to right now?
My favorite discovery is this band called Gang of Youths.
Okay.
They're from Australia.
Okay.
The lead singer, or I guess the writer, he definitely has it's like he grew up in the church, but it didn't work for him anymore. It's like holy and cussing all at the same time. And it's just kind of, it's called Go Farther Into Lightness is the name of their album.
Okay.
And there's so many good things, and it's so beautiful. Like, some of it's just really rocking, and some of it's like instrumentals, and it's like everything that I'd want to say to the divine. And I was just like, I'm gonna just sing along to these songs and let them say it. And then some good electro pop, Nat King Cole.
Okay, I'm sorry, going from electropop to Nat King Cole.
I know.
This is a wonderful visual image right there.
Yeah, I mean, I like everything.
Yeah.
So There's some rap, hip hop. I mean, there's a lot of just amazing stuff going on in music, period. And then I just like everything. It's just kind of, maybe not death metal. Although,
I'm sorry, your face
maybe not death metal. Although I was in California driving around and they had this like 80s at 8 and some Iron Maiden came on. I never grew up with that stuff, and there was something in me that was like, oh, this makes sense now. That I was like, I would listen to this.
Yeah.
So I have been listening to more Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath. Just trying it out.
Well, you know.
Because I was raised to think that was all from the devil.
Right. Well, I mean, I hate to break it to you.
And maybe it was. And he makes good music.
That's right.
So far, he's winning.
Well, there's that whole thing that the blues is from the devil, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
You know,
Soldier
gospel wasn't allowed in gospel for a long time.
The Robert Johnson, Soldier
That's right.
Devil. Mm-hmm.
The only speeding ticket I've ever gotten that was legit, I was on 101 outside of Santa Barbara, and I was listening to Black Flag.
Oh, yeah.
And cop pulled me over and said, do you know how fast you were going? My response was, no, sir. I have not a clue.
Was he sympathetic?
He laughed a little bit and then wrote me the ticket.
Okay.
He says, well, I'm going to write you for this, but you were actually really probably going about this.
Yeah, that's so funny.
I'm so sorry. Stop listening to punk now. It's all good.
I ebb and flow. I've desired much more like silence and quiet more often. There's times when I'll like listen to a ton of podcasts and then I'll go and I won't listen to like music, and then there's a time I'll like just want to listen to music. I don't know if it's just getting older, but I just am like more and more I just like crave silence or a place for my thoughts, or it's not even like I just want to hear the voice of God. I mean, I guess you could say it like that, but it's more about like just being open to whatever wants to come.
Yes.
And making myself like I'm a place where you can land if you'd like to.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great metaphor. As like I'm not being busy right now, so if you're like this butterfly, like I'm not like waving around,
right. I'm
just sitting here, and if you want to land and give me the gift of your presence, I'm waiting for you. It's more of that, like I just have this kind of place of like I'm open for what's next or what you want to, how you want to.
Is that like availability? Does it feel like that?
Yeah, I feel like I feel like my job a lot is just being a listener and being available.
Which ties into the spiritual direction feeling as well, which is a very different role than being a pastor or being a speaker.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that being available to what's going on in the moment, what's going on in the conversation that you're either having out loud or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't really care about the movie stars.
When you are coming out of a busy season, it's after Easter, you've been doing lots of good things, go into a funk for a while, which is, you know, your soul regathering itself and processing all of that. What brings you inspiration again? Is it the funk? Is it the light? Is it the fact that you got outside and it didn't rain on you for a minute? Is it the 10-year-old getting along with the 7-year-old?
It's tough because this is spring break, and man, I sound like a shitty parent, but like I love my kids, but I was like, I really wish they had school this week so I could have some alone time.
Of course.
So I came into a week where it's like you're with the kids all day long, and then there's like a million house things, and then my wife's uber pregnant and feels awful, and it's just nonstop. So yeah, there'd be some like nature time, things like that, quiet. And I got a tattoo this week, so I can't swim. Swimming would be really helpful. Yeah, and seeing people do stuff.
Like what?
Making things.
Okay.
Comedy specials. Theater, movies.
Okay.
Weird stuff. Installation art pieces. I'm still learning the wind down. I wish I lived in Southern California so I could go to the beach every day. I pray for a stint there. I don't want to live there forever, but if I could. I learned how to surf in Washington State.
Okay.
Which is like a survival sport, and and I haven't surfed up here in a long time. It's not, it's an hour and a half drive.
Right.
I've started to when I go down to Southern California. I just pack my wetsuit because I have friends down there, and so I try to get out then. But
I was going to say
wish
the
I had
Pacific
that-
is a cold ocean.
Yeah, I wish I had more of a surf practice because that's my favorite spiritual, physical, embodied experience. It's so
Following the Rob Bell method of
totally.
spiritual guidance. That's excellent.
Well, it before he even voiced it. I mean, it's been a long-standing tradition. It's long-standing conversation in the surf culture.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's physically demanding. It's very humbling. It's really hard, and yet you're in a living organism, a living ecosystem, and you're in movement with it, and it's and just even the water. Just the water is a conduit to the spirit for me. So the water and the cleansing, and you get it in your head, and it comes out of your nose, and it's like a neti pot of salt water, and it just
a really cold neti pot.
A really cold neti pot. Yeah, and it's really great.
Yeah, the whole idea of surfing, it's got that whole Jungian connotation of the subconscious and all of that. What would happen if you saw the caring for your body and the feeling of your body as being connecting to the embodiedness of God?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I think that really resonates with me. I think it would be, admittingly, it'd be a newer idea.
Yeah.
The Norwegian Lutheran church I grew up in didn't quite have that theology.
Really? Didn't
No,
value the body? No?
No, not at all.
Not so much?
No. But Stoicism, maybe they did, or non-emotional conversations.
So valuing the body's ability to not react to anything. Perfect.
Keeping that face. I'm driving with you on that. As seeing it as kind of like as part of a prayer practice. Yeah.
I have hoped for a very long time that when Christ decided to be embodied, part of it was for the joy of experiencing that.
Yeah.
You
Granted, I haven't gone as deep into it as I'd like, but my spiritual practice stopped working for me, or at least unintentionally. Like it's like, this doesn't work for me anymore.
That's normal.
And probably reading Roar and stuff, but there was something about Franciscan spirituality that it just deeply resonated me with, like, acknowledging the world and the physicality of it all. And I heard Roar sum it up saying, Franciscan spirituality which is the physical world is the doorway to the spiritual world, and the spiritual world is much, much larger. And what you just said is like everything is a doorway to the spiritual world. So your body, this material physicality, life, consciousness. Whereas I was given a paradigm which was like, all of this is going to end, and then we'll be into the real world.
Right.
This helps me go, you can't get to that more real world.
That's right.
Than through this. You have to say yes to this. The moment you start dismissing it is the moment you miss where God is and the doorway to that. So when I hear you say that, it's like, yeah.
And that was Elane's chat with Scott Erickson, our friend from Portland, Oregon. He is a painter, an iconographer, a sometime surfer, and a performer. You can see Scott's work at scottericksonart.com. You can also follow Scott at Scott the Painter on Twitter and Instagram. That was recorded live at Compass Coffee in Portland, Oregon. I also want to remind you of God for Recovering Evangelicals. That is our weekend retreat coming up May 18th through 20th in Nashville at the Earhart House. If you do register at schoolforseekers.com before May 11th, May 10th at midnight is our deadline for the $100 discount. $295 will be your price if you register before midnight on May 10th. Otherwise, price goes up to $395. We have a limited number of seats available. Would love to have you. This is a really amazing weekend. We've taught this material several times now, but this is the first time that we've done it in a weekend retreat format. So would love to have you at the Earhart House May 18th through 20th. Hope you will check it out. We are just going to look forward to seeing you next time on Cocktail Theology. Thank you so much for joining us. We love having you. Catch you next time.